Hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. Today I'd like to talk about a very popular topic, and that is the Japanese katana. Okay, so what is a Japanese katana? Well, first of all, let's have a look at the word. The word katana means sword in Japanese. So really, originally, the sword, the word katana, could mean any sword. Both Western swords, Eastern swords, any kind of swords, straight swords, curved swords, smaller swords, bigger swords, everything would be a katana. In fact, even the pole weapon known as naginata. Naginata is actually, if you see the two characters, as I said, it's a pole weapon, mostly used by females, and that's actually the word nagi or nagu means to basically to cut down or to harvest the enemies, obviously, and the nata part is still the same character for katana. Okay, so it's basically a sword to cut down enemies. So the idea of sword is also very similar to the idea of blade in Japanese, although they do have specific technical terms for it. But then again, after the samurai became the only ones who could actually hold a weapon, katana actually became the sword of a samurai. Okay, so in our day and age, in most cases, if you say katana, they mean this. However, there are some Japanese, even in our day and age, that when they say katana, they mean any kind of sword. So, to really be a bit more specific, even this, the wooden one, called bokuto, or occasionally bokken, this is also a katana. Okay? What that means anyway, boku means wood. It's one of the ways to read the word wood, although in most cases now it's pronounced ki, but we still use boku for these things, for compound. And it's the other way to pronounce katana. It's the on-yomi for katana, so the reading of the kanji, the Japanese character, which means it's the Chinese reading. So it's still Japanese, but it's originated from the Chinese original sounds. Whereas katana, it's the kunyomi, which is the way Japanese, it is the actual original Japanese word. But in compound, they tend to use onyomi. So this would be a bokuto or a bokken. Ken is also another way to say sword. So, having said this, let's be technical now, what is a katana? A katana is basically, as you can see, a saber, because it's curved, it's single-edged, it only cuts from this part, it doesn't cut here. It's a single-edged saber attached to a two-handed grip or handle with a very small rounded guard. This is a katana from a technical point of view. Now obviously the forging techniques of the Japanese were very good. They weren't the best though, let me tell you, and a lot of katana fans will not like this part of this video. Again, they were very good, excellent steel weapons, but many people don't know that even the Celts and the Vikings had extremely refined steel techniques, steel forging techniques. So which of the two was the best one, don't really know. But they were both excellent ways of forging steel. Some historians actually think the Viking swords, the way they would produce steel, was even a better quality steel than the one used in Japan. I don't really know about that. I still haven't made my mind about that, but yes, definitely we can't really say that they were the only ones to make really good quality steel. Even our blacksmiths in Europe made excellent long swords with excellent quality steel. Having said this, when you make a katana, the steel is basically made of many different layers during the actual process of smithing the sword. So what you do basically, you keep on folding and hammering down the original lingot of ore. and steel. So, and you keep on doing that over and over and over again, and this increases the sword durability and hardness. And this is one of the particular things about this sword. It's not particularly flexible, but it's very rigid, and it's very difficult to break a katana. It can happen, but it's very, very difficult. But then again, that's a choice, because European swords were more flexible also because they needed to impact shields and armors, and if they weren't flexible, they would have broken. You needed that bit of flexibility. Katana really didn't have to fight shields that much, katana against katana. So in that case, better to have a rigid, robust weapon. Another thing is katana were extremely well sharpened in the single edge, but you can't cut from this part with a katana, and that's actually the whole basis of Japanese martial arts, being kendo and originally kenjutsu. It's all based on cutting only with this part, okay? Because that's how you use a katana. And also, again, as I say, what's my opinion of Japanese katana? It's an excellent cutting weapon, not so as a thrusting weapon. You can still thrust, and tsuki is conceived in Japanese martial arts, like kendo, although I have to say that originally a katana is meant to cut. And in fact, there is another way in Japanese to say kill, which is kiru, which means to cut. And it's a very ancient word which was used in samurai ages. So yes, that's what this sword is designed to do, cut. Even the point of balance, it's 6 inches, and that also proves again that it's a cutting weapon more than a thrusting weapon. You can thrust, but it's not as effective as a rapier, for example. Now, apart from this, what's interesting about this sword is that the combination of a two-handed grip and a saber, single-edged saber, was never really implemented in Europe. Okay? And the reason being is that in Europe it wouldn't have been that effective. I mean, our blacksmiths were people who knew how to build weapons. And the reason why in Europe we did never use this match, it's not because it's rubbish, it's not, obviously it's an excellent match, but it's an excellent match against other Japanese. It wouldn't have been that effective against for example, a full plate armored knight. Sorry to say, but this sword here is not effective against a knight, because this is not what this sword is designed for. True, the samurai also used to wear armors, but it was a completely different kind of armor. The samurai armor is normally an armor which, first of all, doesn't cover the whole body, but it only covers the parts that are important. And in most cases, you have wooden examples, you have leather examples, you even have chainmail occasionally, and you also have metal armor, but it wasn't as advanced as the European one. So I'm not saying a knight would be stronger than a samurai, I'm not saying a samurai would be stronger than a knight. That kind of idea is good for games, not really for history, because this never really happened, and it would really depend on the person we are talking to, on how much training they had. And I have to say that as far as training is concerned, samurais used to have really disciplined training, but also the knights were very well trained. So who knows? No one really knows. But if you have an opinion about this, please tell me in the link below. Personally, I think that katana is not very effective against a full plate armor. But again, that's my opinion. Another thing, I have handled katana. I have received training in kendo when I was in Japan. I practiced kendo for 2.5 years, and I was taught in the city of Ako, which, if some of you know the legend of Ako Roshi, it's actually the city where it's a city very centered on the idea of the samurai. And I have been trained by Japanese masters. I'm not a very good kendoka, unfortunately, but I know how to hold one of these. I have used it, I fought with it. Mostly I fought with a shinai, which is the bamboo version of a katana, but still, you know, I have handled real katanas, real katana, and also bokuto and other Japanese swords. I like them. Personally, I prefer European swords, but I think that they are very effective swords. But the thing is that you have to understand that Japanese swords remain the same for over 800 years, 900 years. They came up with this and they stick to it. And so, whereas European swords kept on evolving all the time. Okay? We have loads of different kinds of swords in Europe. Even in Italy itself, or in England, or in Germany, if we just want to compare nation by nation. Well, some people think that that's because the katana is the ultimate sword, and therefore they stick with this because it was the best thing that they could come up with. No, not really. There are two reasons why they kept this sword. First thing, Japanese are very traditional. Okay? When they have a tradition, they normally stick to it. Obviously, it has to be a good tradition. So I'm not saying that they stick to something that it wasn't good. It's good, but it's good against what they needed to fight, other samurai. Remember that Japan is it's made of 4 different islands. It's detached from mainland China. It is detached from other countries. So in most cases, the Japanese had to fight between each other, between daimyo. So katana was good for this, and that's why it was kept like this. But if they had to fight other cultures with other weapons and other kinds of armor, they probably would have come up with many other different types. So having said this, as I said, katana is mostly a two-handed sword. So it's meant to be used with 2 hands. Occasionally in some films and games I see people swinging a katana like this. Now this is not how you use a katana. Most of the times you need to use 2 hands, and when you only use a hand in modern kendo, for example, you normally use the left hand, because the left hand is the most important hand when you grip a katana. Okay? The left hand controls the sword, whereas the right hand is here just to give support. Okay? This is most cases. Occasionally in Iaido you have things like this, but in most cases this is how you use a katana, this is how you grip a katana, that's the concept. Okay. Now I will talk about katana stances in another video if you're interested in that. I will talk about both kendo stances and kenjutsu stances, because these are 2 completely different things. Not completely different things, but they're 2 different things. It's like talking about hima and modern fencing, so they're 2 different things. So, to sum it up, good work, good sword, probably not the best in the world. You cannot cut tanks and walls in 2 with a katana, obviously, but it's still a good sword. And yeah, it is one of my favorites, but I have to say again, I prefer European swords. It's just personal taste. Please let me know which one you prefer, what sword you like. Also, another thing is that I personally, one thing I like about Japanese swords is that it is easier to put them back in the scabbard. So, and when you unsheath a katana, my master used to tell me that you should move the katana as if you were cutting diagonally, in an oblique sense, which is called the cut of the monk, because it seems that it looks like you're cutting the robe of the monk. Okay, so you unsheath your katana and let it move diagonally. Then take your position. Okay, this is the basic one, just to show. And then when you put it back again, it's a very similar thing. That's the movement. You don't really need to look. See it again. In some films you see, or video games, looks good, but it's fantasy. It's just for fun. And thank you very much for watching. Goodbye. このビデオを見ていただいてありがとうございました。さよなら。